We have all learned that it's not polite to point. We all have probably learned from someone who told us that when we point at others, we have 3 fingers pointing back at ourselves. There are a range of images and metaphors like pointing fingers that help us examine ourselves before we confront others. The Gospels in particular give us several such reminders as to do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. That comes from Matthew 7:12. Or do not judge so that you may not be judged. That comes from Matthew 7:1. And first, take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your neighbor's eye. That comes from Matthew 7:5. Matthew piled on the references to Moses in the opening of his gospel. Jesus survived an imperial edict that all the infant males must die. He came out of Egypt to lead the Hebrew people. He wandered in the desert, and he climbed a mountain to deliver God's instructions to the people. The Sermon on the Mount continued that echo of Moses's and the law as Jesus addressed ethical questions about adultery, anger, divorce, oaths, retribution, and enemy love. And this is just chapter 5. This law from the Mount, Jesus warned, was not a replacement for the Torah or God's law, but it is fulfillment. Those who break the law will be the least in the kingdom of heaven. To make this even more of a challenge, Jesus said that our righteousness is the law should exceed the righteousness of the Pharisees and the scribes. We are thrown off as readers in the opening of chapter 7 with the negative imperative, do not judge. All these guidelines, expectations, and practices, how can we not judge? Our modern religious imagination is infused with judgment. As the song said, do this, do not do that, can't you read the sign? We read religious instructions and understand ethical boundaries as rules that are either followed or broken. So the natural response is to judge or determine whether someone has obeyed or broken the laws. Thankfully, Jesus went on to explain why, lest you yourself be judged. 1 finger is pointing out the fault, while the 3 fingers are pointing back. The injunction to not judge is not about the judgment itself, but about hypocrisy. This is where the metaphor of a log and a speck illustrates that point. To judge another, to name their fault, is not the issue. It is the assumption that we do so without any implication of ourselves in the process. As Augustine said in his commentary on the Sermon on the Mount, the hypocrites are pretenders, often moved by hatred and malice. True accountability and discipleship involves discernment of both others and ourselves. It is a venture in mutuality in which we hold ourselves individually and collectively to the divine exceptions so that we may venture into holiness together. In naming sin or fault, I must necessarily work on myself as well. This kind of log and speck aspect of judgment is one in which we identify the driving force. Are we judging another out of power and malice, or as Augustine said, or are we doing it out of common frailty in order that mercy, not hatred, may lead us? Judgment in our culture today is based on this log and speck kind of self-involvement. It is solely rooted in hatred, frustration, and an attempt to make a moral high ground over others. Chastened Christian judgment, rooted in discernment, invites us into the awareness that our own personal actions miss the divine mark. It is a judgment that invites us and others into a mutually transformative experience where our sins are placed in the open so that the grace of Christ can redeem us both. Jesus' metaphor of logs and sawdust in our eyes is not a call for a perspective where everything goes, nor is it an invitation into useless or excessive contemplation where we internally reprimand ourselves over and over again. Rather, it is an invitation to work on ourselves together. So how do we go about this? First thing you can do is take 30 minutes and reflect inwardly. The log in your own eye can blind you from the error in your ways. Evaluate yourself. Look at your past actions and write down the things that you do that others might disagree with. Are these the things that you always noticed? Did you list things that you weren't conscious of? The second thing you can do is context matters. Look at the list you made. Are there things on your list you do that you have previously condemned people for? Certain things could be correct in one context, but wrong in another. The third thing you can do is fight the urge to make a quick judgment. Take another couple of minutes to make a list of times when you misjudged someone. What made you change your mind about that person? How did you feel when you realized you made an error of judgment? Has someone judged you without knowing your side of the story? How did it feel? The fourth thing you can do is be aware that without all these pieces to the puzzle, you cannot judge the full picture. Take a moment to learn other perspectives, even if they seem to disagree with yours. The world is at your fingertips. Pull up information on what you want to learn about. Make sure it is from a credible source. The fifth thing is none of this works unless you keep an open mind. So in closing, keep an open mind and remember to move the plank from your own eye before worrying about the sawdust in your brother's eye.